Hey everybody, it's your girl, Charlotte Van Horn, Black Expats in Panama by way of little old Glassboro, New Jersey. You know it right here on blacksedradio.com. Look at here, look at here, look at here. Like I always tell you, I have amazing guests on this show. And so when we're opening up, I ain't got time to sit and chit chat and smile with you because we have an amazing guest to bring on. So we have with us today, and I swear I hope I don't mess up her name. Her name looks like Nina, but I'm sure it's pronounced Nyna Caputi, which is a beautiful last name. I love that. She is the CEO and founder of Expat Woman. And I actually was on one of her panels and in events that she did last year. I think it was last year. And I was just so blown away by just how much knowledge she had about moving around, getting groups together. It was so interesting to be in an environment that had expat women from all different places because, basically my niche is Black expats here in Panama for the most part. And so that was a very interesting thing. So anyway, Nina is a real sweetheart. She's full of information. She's a mover and shaker. Just wanted to introduce her to y'all today. So you hang on for a second, and I'm coming right back with Miss Caputi. Y'all don't go nowhere. I'll be right back. Nina, I'm so happy to have you on the show.
Thank you so much, Charlotte, and I thank you for that amazing introduction. And I have to say ditto because you're a mover and shaker, and you have this amazing energy and love for and passion for expats and all that you do. So thanks for inviting me on this very special show. I feel honored and privileged.
You so much. And I felt the same way when you invited me. And, I've just found it very interesting to interact with expats from different places, and especially you. I just feel like you're very professional, very professional, but at the same time, your passion and your love for what you do and your love for women comes through. So I just really want you to introduce yourself, and then you're a reverse expat from what we're used to. Usually, we're talking to people who have left the United States to go to different places, and so you're that reverse expat that I don't think we spend a lot of time thinking about. So I'm excited to have you on the show. So please do introduce yourself and tell us some things about you.
Sure. So my name is Nyna Caputi. You did pronounce it correctly. I am originally from India. I moved to the US 22 years ago. I came to New York to study film, and then I met my husband, who's a local San Franciscan. Uh, we need another whole session for me to share that whole story, but that's how I landed up living in the San Francisco Bay Area. So I call myself an accidental expat because I came here with one suitcase, yeah, and I wasn't planning to stay here, but you come for, I say I came here to study and then I stayed for love. And
Wow.
yeah, we've been married, see, I forgot how many years we've been married, 21 or 20, yeah, I think 21 years. Yes. Yeah, and well, it was crazy because his father thought I was marrying him for the green card. My parents thought I was crazy marrying this guy they didn't know, and but we've proven them all wrong, and we've stayed married, and now we have three kids, and I think a lot of who I am today is thanks to his support, and of course, I think also moving to the US because I know people leave the US for many reasons. I say I
Yes.
found my voice after moving to the US because I think when you overcome challenges, when you step out of your comfort zone and move to a new country, it pushes you to be someone that you might not have been if you lived in your country, just like with you
Sure.
and Black expats in Panama.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I definitely agree with that. And I think that you focus on that a lot. And I think that it's a good thing to bring up because after you've been an expat for a while, you just don't really think about what you're doing as extraordinary. But what you are doing is extraordinary. And I think we're much more used to people expatriating to the United States. And I don't think that sometimes we're as sensitive as we should be. when it comes to that. So we're starting to experience the expatriation part, since more Black people are leaving the United States. But when you came to the United States, what do you think was the biggest? What was the biggest difference at first? What was the
So I
thing, the
think,
hardest thing to get used to?
right, no, great question. So I came to New York to study, and now, and maybe Panama is like India. When we get foreigners visiting India or moving here, we go out of our way to make them feel at home. We invite them over, we take them sightseeing. That's what first hit me with the US is like it's more an individualistic society. It's not so
Mhm.
much community till you get to know people. So I felt both in New York and then when I moved to San Francisco, where my husband lives, I felt very isolated and lonely. And so
Mhm.
I think for me, that was the biggest culture shock that you're basically on your own, that people do not go out of their way to maybe again, I don't want to generalize. I have some lovely American friends. My husband's American, so but it's
Really?
just yeah, that's what struck me as the and again, maybe because I lived in New York and then San Francisco, I know in the South and maybe the Midwest, people are different. I've heard it's like it's a more welcoming community, but I lived in two big cities and so for me that was yeah, a big culture shock is just no, I didn't feel very welcome. And I did also face some discrimination right off the bat. I am a woman of color. I have an
Mhm.
accent. I'm from what some people call like a third world country or developing country. So the
Mhm.
first job I applied for, I didn't get hired. And I heard this from a third party. The woman didn't like my accent. I didn't sound American. So she
Wow.
didn't want, and I didn't know it was I didn't know it was illegal. Is it illegal? But that I could sue her. But you can't
It was
discriminate against.
discrimination.
Yeah, but that was right. My experience very soon after I started looking for a job. So, it's there. I mean, that was open racism, but there's all these subtle things that happen. So, why I brought up so because I know expats, especially expats of color, sometimes face that. We're not sure, right? Is it
Mhm.
because of this or because of that or because the person just is being nasty, right? And I don't know if it was you or someone else who told me once stood in the grocery store and the woman of color and the store guy skipped her and gave asked the other person. She wasn't sure if it was because of her color or because
Exactly.
there's always this thing like is it me? Is it the person, right? But yeah, but the biggest one, as I say, was the loneliness, and that's what led me to create the Expat Woman.
So, okay, couple things there. And it's like I said, I love having these conversations because I think it also helps us to be more empathize more with each other. Because I experienced the same thing in Panama. It took me 8 years to make a friend here. So when I'm serious, I'm very, very serious about that. I wasn't living here, but me and my husband were coming back regularly. I mean, I owned this house since 2012. And Black Expats in Panama was started in 2019 is when I literally started it. But even then, it was very slow. And so now Black Expats in Panama has created a space that never happens anymore. If you come to Panama and you are alone or you feel isolated, it's because you want to. It's not because you have to, because we create all of these opportunities for people to get together. And I make a point of doing group events so that everyone feels safe. I don't like people coming on the page and saying, "Hey, I'm coming into town. Who wants to get together?" I just don't like that. And I have
Yeah.
found that people have been kind of disrespectful or just kind of taking advantage of the fact that people are looking to connect. But I'll say this, when when you have a community, so like, were you able to find other Indians to connect with? First of all,
Yeah,
did you look for other Indians first?
not see, so my husband's not Indian, right? And I've always been very diverse in who I hang out with. Like now, India's not at all, diverse like the US. There are very
Okay.
few people of other nationalities that move there. Maybe they visit, but the few people that were not from India, I always tended to make friends with them because I've always been fascinated with people from other countries and cultures. I love traveling, I love learning about other countries. So I wasn't really seeking out Indians. I'm just my own person. Like, I love my country, my culture, everything, Indian food, which drives my kids and husband crazy because that's all I want to eat, you know. But uh, no, I wasn't really seeking out Indians. I mean, when I saw an Indian, I would want to hug them on the street because, like, oh, there's someone, from my country. But I didn't seek out Indians. I was just actually seeking out other people who had moved here from other countries because when I was in New York, I stayed at the Y, which is like an international dorm for women and men from all over. I was in the women's wing, and all the women who were staying there were also from other countries. So we were navigating New York together. Like I just saw your video about you taking the metro with a group of women. That or men group of expat men and women. That was me. I was the women who are also from other countries. We'd all figure out the metro together, figure out how to use the darn washing machines. Like with the coin operation, and buying a ticket to take the metro. So it was like you said, it was like in a group. So
Yes.
we were exploring New York together. So I forgot what the question was. What was the
No,
question?
no, it was just, well, I was asking you, did you look for other Indians to connect
Yeah,
with?
so they were not, those women were all from other countries. So there was no Indian in my group. So I realized we didn't need to be Indian. I just felt whatever country you came from, we all had similar challenges. And in my case, I grew up speaking English because India was a British colony, and I'm Catholic, and very few people know this. We are less than 1% of the population in India, the Catholics or Christians. But if you think of 1% of 1 billion, that's a lot of Christians, right? But
Yes.
because we were Catholic, my great grandparents, or maybe even before that, they would go to churches run by the Irish, right? So Irish who speak English. So
Okay.
there was this whole movement that if you did anything Indian, you were going against the Catholic faith. So my ancestors adopted English as their first language. They wore Western clothes. They had all Western names. Like only my generation have Indian names, but my mom and dad, my dad's William, my mom's Jeanette, my grandmother was Matilda.
Really?
It's a very small population, but they were very Western. They only watched Hollywood movies. Growing up, I never watched Indian movies. It was this very small community. So for me, that's why moving to the US in terms of language, culture, that was not a shock because I grew up in a fairly Western family. We went to church, our weddings, we wear white. We don't have the long 4-day weddings. We have the same weddings as a Christian wedding in the US. So and that's why I think marrying my husband, American, he's also Catholic. He's of Italian, French, Swiss ancestry.
Mm-hmm.
We had that in common because I grew up in a Western. Maybe if I had, in fact, I tell people maybe if I'd married a guy who was Hindu, which is the main religion,
Yes.
I might have had to fit in more than marrying someone who's grown up in a Western culture because we were pretty, you know, liberal in our thinking. I mean, again, my parents were strict, but it wasn't as like an arranged marriage. Very often in India, you get to meet the guy once, and then you have to say yes. Like,
Yes.
my dad did try to set me up with all these guys, but I just didn't like it. I didn't like the whole thing of like, you meet a guy, then you have to decide, oh, should I marry this guy? I was like, this is not for me. So I found my own guy. So yeah, but
Wow.
that's my background, and that's why it wasn't too hard. Those weren't the cultural shocks for me.
Well, that
Yeah.
was that's I think that for a lot of Black expats, we look for we not that we don't want to integrate, and be with others, but there's just something very family when
Mhm.
it comes to, like you said, when you seen another Indian, you might like want to hug them, but you probably didn't, and maybe that's the cultural differences too, because for I think that especially when you're African American, we have very unique community traits and experiences.
Mhm. Mhm.
So even with you being Indian, the fact that you were raised Catholic, and raised a little different than maybe most of the Indians are, maybe that makes a difference in the sense that we're a lot of Black people that come from the United States that were born and raised in the United States. We have a lot of commonalities.
Right.
Um, I find, and you actually realize that so much more when you leave your country. Because I'm always looking forward and trying to define exactly what is our culture. Because see, we had to really create culture for ourselves because we were brought to, America as slaves. And so we weren't allowed to bring, things that we may have remembered from Africa or different places that we had come from and in Africa. And then after a while, those people died, as the generations died, and took that memory and that history with them. We were just here, finding ourselves in an oppressed society, finding
Right.
ourselves and not being allowed to find ourselves, not being allowed to find ourselves, not being allowed to read, not be allowed to eat what we wanted to, given the worst of the worst of the worst of everything, families being torn apart, and so when you think about the survival of African Americans, and I use the term African American, people use different terms. I'm
Yeah.
not a woman of color, I'm Black, and I am
Mm-hmm.
an African American, and that is just how I identify myself. And but when you have to overcome all of that, I think that when you're used to, like the Black woman was telling you, was the woman being rude to her because she was Black, or was
Right.
something else going on? That is
Right.
common. And I think that, one thing I've had to overcome is to stop letting that be my default. I had to learn to not let that be my default every time. And sometimes, to be honest with you, it is racism. And a lot of people will always try to do this little kumbaya thing when it comes to these international spaces that they're living in. And I don't blame them because it's so much better than the United States. The United States is awful when it comes to race relations. It's just awful. But there are other places that have issues too, but it's just not as bad as where we came from,
Mhm.
right? But the thing that connected, what I just connected with you, is the discrimination. The fact that you were discriminated against because of, and she said it was your accent, but probably what it was your accent and the fact that you were a woman of color.
Right. And I'm
So
from
it's
India.
our life. Mm-hmm.
And I'm from India because I've been having a lot of discussions about accents,
Mm-hmm.
and they say if you have like a Western European accent, say French or British or
British.
Australian, those accents, people love those accents, right? Yeah. So it's there's discrimination against accent you were talking about, like this mindset. I feel sometimes, especially I'm scared of the older, and again I have a lot of amazing older women, white friends, and nice, kind people, but whenever there's an older white woman in the grocery store, maybe she's nice, but I'm thinking, is she looking at me a little differently because, I'm not white? Like, is
Yes.
she seeing me as this immigrant, or when I
Yes.
have to speak up with my accent, like in a room full of mostly Americans, I don't want to be the foreigner. I don't want to be this
Mm.
person. And then there's this assumption, right? You have an accent, you speak, so you're not, English is not your first language, so people tend to talk to you louder or they'll speak very slowly, and I feel like telling them I grew up speaking this language. Maybe I don't speak with the British accent, but we got our English from the British. So, there's
Yes.
all this stuff. And yeah, so I'm even at this stage in my life, it's like, is she looking at me like this? Yes, I went to a European Chamber of Commerce networking event and I was nervous to go because I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to go into this room full of white people from Europe. I'm not from Europe. I was curious because I like learning about different countries and stuff. And then you wonder, like, is she looking at me because I mean,
Yes.
there was even some black women. There were, I saw a few other Indian women, so it wasn't, as bad as I thought. But one or two people were
Yes.
not friendly with me, and I was like thinking, maybe they're treating me like this because I'm Indian, or maybe they're just introverts. It's so hard to know. But I love what you said about the culture and how big and I've realized that after living here that there is a culture for the African American
Mm-hmm.
community,
Mm-hmm.
and so it makes sense when you all meet in another country, right? Because
Yes.
you
Yes.
might have more similarities. And I was a minority in India. I was
Mm-hmm.
considered an outsider. I grew up again facing discrimination in India for being
Right.
Catholic, for people, and because my name was Indian, I even had kids in school ask me like, why isn't your name Michelle or Veronica? Why do you have an Indian name? And then I used to wish I was a Michelle or Veronica, or or maybe Charlotte. I have aunts who are called Charlotte, because yeah, because they all chose Western names. So yeah, so I was a minority then. Then I come to the US and I'm a minority. So I have faced discrimination in India, being Catholic, being a minority. In fact, once one of my colleagues, imagine when I was working, he said, you should move to the US or to the West because you don't belong here. You're not Indian enough. So, yeah. Or you're Catholic, you guys are, you and your community is forcing people to convert and all this kind of stuff. So I faced, yeah, stuff over there that, so it's like a continuation of that.
It's like, there's so many things that you're saying that parallel to a lot of the lives of African Americans.
Right,
I mean,
right.
absolutely. And then you'll have that was so deep what you just said. My camera does this whole focus
Oh,
thing.
don't worry about it.
But
Yeah.
there's this whole thing in the Black community um in the US where it's nothing for somebody to tell you you're not Black enough.
Right.
Like,
I heard that.
you're not Black enough. And, you hear this term monolithic. It's like, blacks in America are not monolithic. We all, we think different things. There's all types
True.
I could call myself African Americans. As opposed to everybody being one thing. But you will have our own people tell you that you ain't Black enough.
Right.
So I know what that feels like, and I know that people in our community know that too, especially people who are extraordinarily light
Mm,
or fair skinned, or people in our community who are biracial.
mm,
Biracial. They have to deal with that. I wasn't white enough, or Chinese enough, or whatever
right.
enough for that community. And
Right.
then,
Right.
even though my skin was darker and I did things with Black people, I wasn't Black enough for them either. And then
Right.
so we bring all of that, but I like that we're talking about it because, you know, we can overcome that. And just because that has been our experience doesn't mean that we have to bring that weight with us to another country. And even though you'll sense it sometimes, it's just going to happen. It's not the life that you live. It's like you don't live for that. You don't live worrying that this is going to always be the situation. But so when you were in New York, you actually started being an advocate for expats back then?
No, I was like so, clueless. Like when you move to another country, right? Especially, I didn't know I was going to live here. I mean, my husband proposed to me, my now husband proposed to me pretty quickly after we met because he had heard about the arranged marriages in India and he was like, oh shoot, she'll go back to India and then her dad's going to marry her off to someone else. In fact, like a few months later, he told me when I proposed to you and you said yes, I was like, oh hell, now what did I get myself into? So
Was I really ready, or he was just so afraid of losing you?
I just knew he was the right guy. I just knew it. It was, in my
Oh,
case, I knew it because I had gone through so many bad relationships. I was like, this is the guy for me. But, I think guys, they
what
have a
year
harder
was that,
time.
Nina?
Which year?
What
It
year did you and your husband meet?
We met in 2002 on
Wow.
on Halloween night. Halloween,
Wow.
yeah, he came to New York to meet me and he proposed to me the day after that.
My goodness.
Yeah,
What
yeah,
a
yeah.
great story.
Yeah, so it was, I mean, we took a risk. Not every relationship.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
You sure
yeah,
that you beat the odds. Not only
right.
did you take a risk, you beat the odds. And I'm
Yeah,
I'm, I'm
maybe,
happy for you.
yeah. Maybe God was looking out for me. Maybe he said this time I'm
Yes.
going to give her the right guy after all the bad relationships.
I
So,
love it.
yeah.
So you met in New York, and then did you finish school there, or
I
did
did. I did.
how long did you stay in New York?
I did a very short film course because I had reached a point where I was like, I can't sit through, I have a master's degree and I was like, not in film, in zoology and biotech. I was like, I can't go study another, few years. So this is why I chose this. It was the New York Film Academy. It was a very intensive course, but it was also very exciting because you're shooting on the streets of New York. This was my first visit to the US. I traveled to other countries, but I'd never been to the US. You come right into New York. Now, luckily, I grew up in big cities. I grew up in Mumbai, which is, the commercial capital of India. And as I said, I traveled to other countries before, so that wasn't so hard. But it's still like, being in New York, it was fun. It was really nice. Yeah. So he proposed, and he wanted me to meet his family. This is all like crazy. They all thought I'm marrying him for the green card. We went to his family's from New Jersey. I mean, because a lot of the Italians settled over there. So,
Oh, I'm
but
from
no.
Jersey.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Yeah, so that was one of the first places I visited after New York, and beautiful, really beautiful. And then we came to San Francisco, where he lives and where his brother lives, and then his parents live in Oregon. So, eventually met everyone, and then we got married. We got married quickly, pretty quickly, like civilly in San Francisco at City Hall, because for me to stay in the country, we had to marry, because they said if you go back on a fiance's visa, it's going to take a long time for you to enter. And he was like, and I was like, I don't have a job. So sure, I just knew he was the right guy. So, that I just have felt it in my heart and my bones. So yeah, and then 6 months later, we had a church wedding. My parents came from India. My brother was in Dubai, I think, at that time, and then some cousins. I have a lot of family in the US, so they all came. In fact, I had more relatives at the wedding than he did. So,
Oh, get out of here. Oh, that is so awesome. So,
yeah.
okay, so because I know you had said that you all were trying to learn the train system. So I thought you had just kind of started the expat thing then, but that was
No,
just you with other people.
I think it planted the seeds though. I think somewhere deep down it was, when you spoke about doing things in a group and feeling that community, I experienced that because when I came to San Francisco and then we married, I did feel very lonely because I was living even though San Francisco is beautiful, it was still isolating. He works in film, so he was gone most of the time. In fact, my father-in-law would call me the film widow because I was alone for so long. So I started looking up for communities, this was 2003, 2000, end of 2002, 2003 for expats. And I was looking for professional expat women groups because,
Yes.
there were a lot of nonprofits that worked with low income women who had moved here, but it was really helping them with more, like basic jobs. I wanted to find women like me, like you, we are just high achievers. But I could
Absolutely.
not find those. So that's when I was like, I need to create this community. So, like I'm sure with you too, it comes from a need, right? You were trying to find that group.
Exactly.
Yeah, and you don't find it,
Exactly.
you create it. Yeah.
So, but you've done like 400 events?
Yes, yes. Yeah, I have. I have. Yeah. I love hosting events. And again, I did my first events in the US. I'd never hosted an event in India. So I learned in the US. The US was my platform to learn everything, to fail and to
Wow, I
experience.
love
So,
that.
yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so when you got to Cali, that's when you really started kicking in, looking for women to connect.
Not
Now,
really. Yeah,
no?
not really. No, no, I was looking for women to connect, but the expat woman, I was looking for a job because I,
Exactly. Okay,
yeah,
okay. So it wasn't like you were looking to do expat woman as a job. It was just
no.
something that evolved. And that's kind
Yes.
of like what happened with Black expats in Panama as well. Black
Right.
expats in Panama is my entire life at this point. I have had to I mean, really, honestly, I have so many people around me now that are helping me keep things going because it just is at the point where I just cannot. I just cannot, and I just was absolutely killing myself trying to. And so I appreciate the contractors and the staff that I have around me, and also the community to help because it was just organic and it just grew into this wonderful thing. But so. Tell me when you officially started Expat Woman and tell me about the Expat Woman.
Right. So then I think so I was so desperate to find a job, right? Like because in the US, in India, when they meet you for the first time, they ask you where you from in India, because we can tell from people's accent, their skin color. In India too, we have so many different skin colors. In the US, and when I went to parties, people always ask me, "What do you do?" And I was like, "Shoot, I don't have a job." And then those days, side hustles and all didn't exist. So I was like, I need to find a job. So I was so desperate to find a job. I was applying everywhere. So, the whole, and of course, when I was looking for a job, it's very different looking for a job in different countries. Like in the US, it was a one-page resume. The interviews are very different. It's a very individualistic culture. So you always talk about, I did this, I achieved that. Whereas in India, if you say they think you're showing off, you're bragging. You have to say me, you have to be, I don't know, things might have changed. It's been so long, but and in India, we'd have many pages in our resume. You sometimes put your photo. People would even put marital status, whether they have kids, their height, all that's not, it's illegal here, right? So I had to relearn that, because in India they can ask you, oh, you're single, are you planning to get married? Or if you're getting married, are you planning to have kids? In the US, all that. So I had to learn all that. So I did go for some courses, but I think the back of my mind was like, wow, this is hard. I remember I was invited for a baby shower, and I had no idea what's a baby shower. Now they have them in India, but in those days they didn't have them. Like, what do you
Wow.
wear? What kind of gift? And then when I went to the baby shower, the woman was opening gifts in front of us. That is a new culture for me, because in India you do not open gifts at your birthday or until everyone's left, and then you open them quietly, because it's considered greedy. See, the different cultures, not no culture
Yes.
is right or wrong, but it's considered greedy opening the gift.
You're
And
like,
second,
I can't believe this, right?
yeah,
Oh, that's
and
hilarious.
yeah, and one is it's considered greedy opening the gift because it seems too eager. And secondly, if you don't in India, if you don't like the gift, how do you show like you're excited about? I'm sure you've
Yes.
been there, right? Where you get this gift, like, what the hell is this? What did she give? But
Like, oh
here
my
you do
God,
that.
why would you
Yeah,
like this is nice. And as you're saying this, everybody's listening, like, yes, I've experienced that. Where you gotta act like you like it.
right. Where in India, if you don't like it, next. So
Yes.
I went to this baby shower and she started opening the gifts and I was like, what is going on? And then I had bought like, I don't remember, maybe baby shoes and a little thing. And she said, who gave this gift? Because everyone else had the names on the thing. I didn't put a name. I was so embarrassed. I didn't say anything because I was like, how do I say I gave this gift? This is all so new to me. So that was
Yes.
like, yeah, I had to learn. So I was realized like when women move here, and again, it's not just Indian culture. I know some other Latin American, maybe some European, they don't open gifts in public. That's just one example, right? Every country has
Yes.
their own rules, and it's not no. I've realized nothing is right or wrong. We do different things
Right.
differently, right? But I realize all of us women who have moved, they are trying to figure out not just how to take the train, but also what is culturally appropriate. How do you when you go for a baby shower, what do you wear? What is a rehearsal dinner? How do you dress for that? How do you dress for work? It's what is business casual? I had no idea what business casual was. Like, come business casual, right? Or, taking the to-go boxes home. Like, the first time I didn't know it was called to-go. I said Togo. Can you give me the Togo box? Because I'd seen that
To
to-go.
go, to go.
Yeah, yeah, like in India, we maybe sometimes we would do it, but it's generally considered now things have changed, but we never took home the leftovers, and I think it's great. I love taking home leftovers. I don't have to cook. And then the other final thing I wanted to share was going Dutch, like like a potluck. In India, a potluck, when you say come for potluck, it means I'll take all the leftovers out of my fridge and we'll eat whatever I have. That's what. And I realized here in the US, it means you take a dish, and I was like. When the first time I
Everybody
got
puts the
invited, like,
meal together. Oh, this is so
yeah,
interesting.
yeah. And when the guy invited me for the potluck and he said you bring whatever chips and salsa I thought how rude. He's inviting me to a party. He's throwing the party and I have to bring the food for the party. And now I host potlucks, but in India, you never ask people to bring food for a party.
Yes.
Right. I think it's helpful here because in India we have cooks. It's, cheaper to have help. Here it's
Yes.
really expensive, so we have to do everything ourselves. So it makes a lot of sense that these whole potluck parties and stuff. But
Very
yeah,
Caribbean too. As you were talking about that, that's something that it sounds like what you guys used to do was what the like Caribbeans or call one pot. meaning you take all of the leftovers that you have and you cook it in one pot.
Wow. Yes, yes. Yeah, something like that. So that's so even words, English words have different definitions in
Yes.
different countries. What you call potluck in India, and we got a lot of the terms from the British, so I don't
Yes.
think it's like an Indian potluck term, but that and then the final one was a birthday party, like when people said, "It's my birthday, I'm having it at this pub or at this restaurant," and then we all had to pay for the person. Because in India, when it's a party, it's your birthday, you pay for everybody. So whether it's in the house or a restaurant or a bar, you pay for your guests. So and the last one I'll add one. And again, this is not bashing the US. This is where I found myself. I'm talking about cultural
It's just
differences.
differences.
Yeah, the final one was like weddings too. Like, oh, when we got married, people said, "Oh, do you have a wedding registry?" And I was like, "What is that?" Like, now things might have changed in India, but I was like, you ask people for what you want, and I think it's pretty smart. So you don't get 10 toasters or 10, you
Yes.
know, what's it, whatever. So, but at that time it was so I chose the cheapest things on the because I was so uncomfortable, like $10 muffin pans and. Because I was like, what? This is so weird. So yeah, I'm all that is now no longer. It's all part of my mixed culture, I would say, here in the US. But
But
yeah,
those are things, those experiences are so rich because as you're meeting new expats to the US, telling those stories, because depending on what culture and country they come from, they're going to have different things.
mm,
I had this coolest friend years and years ago, must have been almost 40 years ago, because my daughter was just born when I knew Maruk. Her name was Maruk, and she was from Pakistan. He used to speak Gujarati. I think it was called
oh,
Gujarati. She taught me a few words, and I
wow.
just loved her. But she was so frank. You were reminding me of her when you were just speaking, and a couple of things that she did to me that I just have never forgotten. And Baruch, like you, and she was an immigrant, right? In the U.S., she was probably what they call now a trailing spouse. Her husband
Mm,
John was very 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 I think high level professional somewhere. And anyway, so she had to work. I think Maruk may have been a doctor. She may have been the level of education that she had. She was working in a job way beneath that. Like you
mm,
said, when you were looking for professionals, like, some of the organizations, they didn't have jobs that were going to meet your expectations because of your education and experience, right? So I think this was Maruk. And back then I didn't know anything about immigration or, you
right.
know, didn't really get into expat experiences and stuff like that. I just think a lot about her now. But I know one time he came over to me and she said, I was trying to, because, I come from like meager beginnings. And so you use the end of everything. I mean, I've never seen nobody get more toothpaste out of tube than my sister. And I was like, she embarrassed me. I was like, what are you doing? Like, I talk about getting the last drop. I mean, sometimes life was like that. So you do things that you don't even recognize that you do. And one time I was over there trying to get this pen to work, trying to get this pen to work. And it must have been something that I did often because it drove her crazy. She got up and she had like this, she almost had she had a real thick build. She wasn't fat or anything. She was just like solid. And she would have on these low heels, and she walk over real hard. And she came over. She snatched the pen out my hand, and she said, "Damn it! Throw it away, Charlotte. It does not work." She threw it in the trash. And I've never forgotten that. And anytime I see a pen, after this is almost 40 years ago, and I think of Maruk. But then my mother passed. And Maruk, when I came back to work, it was like before the funeral, but you just come back, you come back and you're still getting ready for things. And Maruk said to me, she said, "I'm so sorry that your mom died." And she was really sorry. And but she said, "I don't know what to do for you." She said, she said, "Where I come from, we don't spend money on the dead." And people were talking
Yeah.
about flowers and, different things like that. And that was the first time she really talked about how a significant difference in the culture, and she didn't know what to do. And back in those days, we didn't have Google. We didn't have AI to answer all of
Mm,
our questions and make us so
mm,
smart and bright. Okay. And so she said, I don't know what to do for you. She said, I talked to Penny and I told her, and Penny said that you guys buy flowers or something like that. And then she said, but I don't know because we don't spend money on the dead. And then she said, then I told Penny she was going to get me a big, like, cement Potter, like for outside. And Penny was like, no, Maruk, you don't buy that. But you just made me think of her and all of the lessons that she was probably learning, coming
mm.
from Pakistan, and coming into the US. And it's just now I'm sensitive to it, but I wasn't then.
And you wouldn't know, like I'm sure people, when coming to India too, there's so many, cultural differences. Or, I was in Japan. This year I love traveling, so I went to Australia and Japan. And every culture is different. For instance, in Japan, you don't walk and eat. You don't eat on the train. You don't speak on the train unless you speak in a soft voice. So, but as you say now, I just asked ChatGPT, what do I do in Japan to not offend the Japanese, right? But
Yes,
right,
yes,
and that's why I started the Expat Woman, because there was very little information on what and like does the US know what is a culture shock for Indians, right? You won't know
right.
because right, like the funeral thing. You're right. I was like, this is like they come in limousines and with white gloves, and it's wow, it's like a wedding. Being
Yes,
Catholic, we do flowers and we have the coffin, similar to a Christian or maybe even
yes,
a funeral here, but all the additional expense. But as I said before, it's every country has its own culture, and there's nothing wrong or right unless people are being racist or discriminating. I mean, that is a hard part. But everything else, you either can ignore it or you can, as they say in Rome, do as the Romans do. You can still hold on to your culture, but you can
yes.
also,
Embrace.
assimilate, right? Right,
Yes,
and that's what I've
yes,
done. Yeah, like
yes.
there's certain Indian things I still like doing, but
Hmm.
if I want to, obviously I'm going to open the presents if everyone else is opening the present, because they're like, see what I gave you, see what, and I'm like, no, I'm not going to open it because in India we don't do that. No, right? So
Yes.
yeah.
That is so different. So,
Yeah.
okay, so you started Expat Woman. Well, tell us about that.
Yeah, so I started it. So I'll go back a little bit. So I work for a nonprofit that work with immigrant professionals for helping them find jobs in the US from Africa, from Asia, all the countries where it's harder for people first of all to come to the US. If you have from a Western country, it's pretty easy to get a visa and get a job. If you're from Asia, Africa, Latin America. So those were the countries, and Eastern Europe. Those were the countries that this organization worked with. And but I had already wanted to start the Expat Woman at that point, but I got this job, so I took it because I was like, this will give me experience with what are the
It's
challenges of it.
perfect.
Yeah. But then in between, I made a documentary film with my husband about gender violence in India because there's a lot of discrimination against girls and baby girls. Either they're, killed after they are born in the poorer families, or they are aborted because they're girls. So that was like I just felt very strongly after moving here. Again, I would never made it
Yes.
if I lived in India, but you live in another country and suddenly you're like, I have to do this for my country. I have to showcase. So I got caught up in that. But that's where I learned how to host events because I had to host fundraising events, and I got in touch with so many of the Indian community because they were amazing, but also a lot of Americans came forward to support me. So that's when I think my leadership skills really came into play. And I had to basically, it was like running a business, making a film is like running a business. You have to
Yes.
find people to, my husband shot most of it. Thankfully, he's a film, that's why I think I decided to make it, but finding editors and finding people to do the sound and all that interviewing people. So, but when I was done with it, and it took us many years, and but as I was getting closer to finishing it, I told my husband, now is the time that I'm going to start the Expat Woman. So I started it in 2013. So it's 11 years. And initially,
I
go
just
ahead.
interrupt you for 1 second because I don't want to forget. What was the name of the documentary?
It was called Petals in the Dust. India's Endangered Girls. I no
Petals.
longer have it online though. It's not
Oh,
available.
okay, it's
Yeah,
gone.
the
Okay, it
reason
sounded
being
like it was good.
it was good. It had created a lot of impact, and I also I also shot in the US and in Canada among the Indian community because I realized it was also happening there. You know, sometimes there's some people who take their country with them to another country, and they're more traditional and conservative in the country they've moved to than they would be in their original country. So some of them were bringing this discrimination against girls or terminating their pregnancies because it's a girl because they wanted to have only boys. India is a patriarchal society. Even though we had a woman prime minister, Indira Gandhi, years ago, when she was like one of the most powerful heads of a country. But there's and we have women goddesses. The Hindus worship a lot of strong women goddesses, but there's this deep-seated discrimination against women for many reasons, but the reason it's no longer available because I had to get all this I had to have a lawyer because I was doing a lot of expose, and so in case I got sued, but then my licenses ran out, and then I got so immersed in the expat woman, I
Yes.
can't do two things, so it's
Yeah,
no longer
okay.
available. Yeah, but that's when I started the expat woman, and I started it like an online resource for all the things I was writing blogs, what's Thanksgiving about, what's a Thanksgiving meal, all like little different things. But then I realized I want to meet people in person. My first event that I hosted in San Francisco was at the press club. It's like a wine bar. I drink, but I don't really like alcohol. My grandfather was alcoholic, so and he left my grandmom when my dad and his brother were 2 years old. So my dad was brought up by a single mom, and he always used to tell us how hard their life was. And they say alcoholism skips a generation, so the grandchildren can. So my parents put the fear of God in my brother and me growing up, saying, you could become alcoholic. I think you can go either way. You can become alcoholic or you can dislike alcohol. Both my brother and I dislike alcohol. So I like sweets. So I put all my calories come from sugar. But I'm sitting in this bar with a glass of orange juice or lemonade, and no one showed up. And it was like, oh my God, I'm hosting an expat woman event and not one person. And then when I went home, my husband was like, maybe this is not, you shouldn't be doing this. Look, there's no interest. But I persisted. And I'm sure you have similar stories,
Yes.
right?
Hmm.
Persistence because you're so passionate, you want to make it happen. And then over a period of time, my events got very active. I got so busy that I didn't do the website much. I was hosting an event every week in San Francisco. And then,
Wow.
yeah, it was like, and all these companies who wanted to hire minority women, immigrant women, women of color, they started sponsoring my events. So I've had events at Google, at Yelp, at GoPro, at Microsoft, because they want, and all my panel would be women from other countries, because I wanted to show women in the audience if they can be on that panel, they can be starting businesses or working for the corporate world or be in the C-suite, you can do it too. So that was like always showcasing and highlighting, and it was open to everyone. But that's how it kind of organically grew.
Wow.
Yeah,
Yes.
I never thought I'd be an entrepreneur. Didn't even know what that word meant maybe before I came, never thought about it. Just happened organically and it grew into mostly San
So now
Francisco.
you do that full time. Is
It
expat
became
woman
like
full time?
you. It became a full-time job. And because I love it, I'm excited about it. I mean, I'm also a LinkedIn coach because I use LinkedIn to promote my events because, LinkedIn was founded in San Francisco. And when I was working for that nonprofit for immigrant professionals, I remember one of our clients, he said, I have 500 people on LinkedIn. And I was like, wow, what is this platform? Because I have no network. That's another thing when you move to a country, right? You don't have that network, especially you don't have the professional network.
Yes.
And yeah, so I joined LinkedIn and then I made all these amazing connections. And because of LinkedIn, I became very successful with my events because I'd promote my events on LinkedIn. I would find speakers on LinkedIn. I would reach out to sponsors on LinkedIn. So when the pandemic happened and I started talking more about LinkedIn, people by default or organically I also became a LinkedIn coach because people were like, you were successful with LinkedIn because I grew my business to 6 figures and LinkedIn played a role in that. So people said, can you teach us how to use LinkedIn? So now that's my side hustle. The expat woman is my main, but LinkedIn is my platform, and I have achieved so much success with it. From a zero network to now I have close to 16,000 folks in my network, and I'd say 80% are expats in my LinkedIn network.
Love it. And what an encouragement, for people just, and you said something so important. You said when you went, you were sitting there and nobody came. And, you know, there are so many people that not only would not do it again, there are so many people that will hear what you just said and say, that's why I can't do it.
Right.
Because they're so afraid of failure. And I just think that the biggest deterrent to success is fear. I have a book club and we were just talking the other night and I said, I think that um I'm not afraid of failure. I'm not. What I think I'm more the way that I'm wired, I think I'm more afraid of not doing it or knowing that it was an idea that I had and I didn't do it and then someone else did it. That
Right.
part. If you had a scene, if you had stopped at that point and just said, okay, well, this is not for me. And then somebody else came up with Expat Woman and did exactly the thing that was in your heart and your spirit to do. So I just congratulate you for sticking to it because that is half the battle,
Yeah.
and at some point the season will be up and being able to recognize too when you need to open a new door and shut one, just like you said, okay, I couldn't really be devoted to the documentary and this too, and you had to make a choice, and it's all, and then being able to get so good at LinkedIn that you become a LinkedIn coach, and you are good. I mean, the way you manage that event that I was a part of, I was like, this girl is magical. Like, how does she keep up with all this stuff? And, you know, so just real briefly, can you tell me how do you offer services like your LinkedIn coaching services? How does that work?
So I started with one-on-one coaching for LinkedIn. So people would reach out to me saying, "Can you help us with our LinkedIn profile? Can you help us create content? Can you help us build our network? Because your network is your net worth." So I started doing one-on-one coaching. I started working with a few companies as well to help their employees build their LinkedIn presence. And then I realized I can't do one-on-one all the time. So I created an online course for people to learn how to use LinkedIn, taking them, through the different pillars, like there's 5 pillars. So I did, and this was all during the pandemic because, I couldn't host events in person. So I had more
Right,
time. Yes. And then I started a LinkedIn membership. It kind of, for a while, I neglected the Expat Woman because my events came to a standstill, right? And in fact, I deviated. I changed the Expat Woman. I have a membership to Her Success Society because suddenly I was like, because my main source of income and my main audience was in San Francisco. And like you said, sometimes when you face with a challenge, you give up or you try something new. And I kind of gave up on the Expat Woman for a while,
mm-hmm.
which may not have been the best, course because I should have just thought a bit more out of the box and started doing it online, right? But then I realized that with Her Success Society was for any woman who wanted to step out of their comfort zone and achieve success. So it was a very broad audience. So it was any woman. But then as the pandemic was coming to an end, I realized I missed my expat community. So I went back to the expat woman. And you were talking about failure. One of my favorite quotes is by Nelson Mandela. I don't know if you've heard it. I love it. He said, "I never lose. I either win or I learn."
Learn. Yep.
Right?
Yes,
So
yes, and
he
that's
maybe
exactly
existed.
it.
Yeah, like what he
That's
said, right?
exactly it.
If you don't, what I also love what he said was if you don't do, someone else might do it. So you just go for it. You don't worry about failing. You worry about, I learned, like I learned Her Success Society was not for me. I'll just focus on helping expat women achieve success, and step out of their comfort zone because that's the audience I love. That's the audience I understand best. So I niched down. I went back to niching down. So I think also the riches
Yes.
are the niches. And in your case, you are really niched down because it's just black expats in Panama. So I think That, people think if you niche down, you won't get the monetization, but it's
Yes.
not true at all. Yeah.
Well, and I cheat. I always say we only have a few more minutes, but I always say I cheat at business because when I was actually a brand ambassador for Sister Locks Corporation when I had gotten to that level in that business. But I had Sister Locks. So people who have Sister Locks is typically your black woman, 40 and up, it's like I'm doing my own thing. I got my own money, that kind of personality. And I had been getting my hair done for years before I became a Sister Locks consultant. And I knew there were services and things that I felt could have been better about the things that what I was receiving as a client. So when I became a Sister Locks consultant, I was my client. And everything that I ever could have dreamed of, people always said I did too much, I didn't charge enough, but that's another story because I do things from my spirit. Okay. And everything I could have dreamed of that I wanted as a client, that's what I gave my clients. Okay.
That's it.
Same thing with Black expats in Panama. I tell you, I cheat. I am a Black expat in Panama. I know exactly what you're going through. I've been through the process. I'm passionate. I'm comfortable sharing because I've walked through things myself. I've made connections with people who can explain the more broader, nuances to things. But it is it's an awesome type thing when you can be doing something that you love and that you can connect with. It's not a job. If it was a job, I couldn't work it 24/7 like this. I literally do this
Right.
24/7, and it's just the season that I'm in. And if that season changes and God points me in another direction, I will go without looking back. I
I
will.
love it.
I
Yeah, I
will
love
go
it. I think
without looking back.
yeah, I think it's finding your zone of genius. You know what, when it work doesn't feel like work, when you wake up in the morning excited. So even when something doesn't turn out, it doesn't matter because you love it and you're so passionate. And I think we both make money helping women, so we are doing something we love and we're also getting paid for it. And I think there's no shame in that, because if you don't make money, you can't lead the life you want to live, and then how are you going to help
Exactly.
others, right? So because I think women also feel ashamed to make money. Like sometimes I'll get someone saying, why are you charging for the tickets, you're supposed to be helping women. I was like, yeah, we how come you tell Apple, or you tell, even the other products, even say buying
Exactly.
sanitary products, they should make it all free because we can't help it if we, have our monthlies or whatever. So you should give all that free, right? Why is it when we help women, we have to give it for free? Why, so I think we need to change the narrative. And with expat women, I think that, you and I are examples of women who stepped out of our comfort zone. As you said, it took you 8 years to get the lay of the land. It's taken me a long time too. But because of the pains and struggles we face, we're now able to share our knowledge, our expertise, our
Exactly.
community, right? And also enjoy it in the purpose, because you're making all these amazing connections and friends. And I watch your videos, Black Expats in Panama. I feel I'm there. I get so excited. Like, just even I was following your trip on the metro and the bus, and I was like, shut, I am leading the expat life through you in Panama,
Wow.
so
You
it's like,
gotta
yeah,
come. I gotta have you. I gotta have you at something. We're getting ready to do we really have to plan to get together, Nana, because I just love you to pieces and you have so
likewise.
much to offer. And as we're talking, I know people are listening or watching, however you're seeing this, and saying, wow, I cannot believe all that we have in common. And that was one of the experiences that I really enjoyed about being a part of the Expat Woman a group that you have. I'm not as active as I would like to be in anything at this time because it's just at this. I'm in this season, but just amazing. Now, so tell me this. We got to get ready to go. But I'd like to know, do you have any events that are coming up that you want to share with us about? Let us know how to find you and give us that one piece of advice that you might give to, I know it's a lot, but you're young, you can remember. And give us that one piece of advice that you might give to people that are becoming expats.
Sure. So I thank you so much. First of all, thanks for having me on the show. I just want to add, I do have a lot of Black expats in my community.
Okay.
A lot of them who have actually left the US. As I speak, one of them is right now in Mexico because she wants to live there. I have another one woman in my community who's traveling in New York, and then I have someone in Mauritius. So it's we have people who are similar to your community who are living
Yes.
the non-American life abroad. So that's why I find that so
Exactly.
interesting. I host a virtual networking event for expat women across the globe on the first Wednesday of every month at 9 a.m. So I invite you and your community to join. It's free. It's just a way to get, you realize when you bring all these women together, we all have similar stories, challenges, no matter where we live, no matter where we come from. I also have women who are not yet moved abroad who want to join just to get that experience, like, wow, this is what they go through, this is what I can expect. And
Time
so that
zone, Nina. What's the time zone for that 9
it's
a.m.
9
call?
a.m. Pacific Standard Time, which would be
Okay.
noon Eastern Standard Time. I'm not, what is the
Okay.
time in Panama? What is the time in Panama?
It's right now 12:32.
Okay, okay.
So you're
So
like
yeah, so you're
two.
2 hours behind. So it would be 11 a.m. in Panama, 11
Okay,
a.m.
got
Panama
you.
time.
Got you.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I'm hosting the Expat Woman Audio Summit, which is it's only going to be audio, and I have it's called Get Coached for Success. It's free, and it's the expatwoman.com/audio summit, and it has women who are expat coaches from different countries sharing like a coaching session on a certain challenge that expats face. Like I'm teaching people the secrets of leveraging LinkedIn to run a business abroad. So it'll be like a 30-minute coaching session. So it's free. And for the virtual events, it's the expatwoman.com/events. So you can, if you go to that page, you'll see all the events coming up. And I also host a live like you on my show, the Expat Woman
Hmm.
Show. So I'm on YouTube, the Expat Woman. It's just the expat woman. Everything is the expat woman. Only thing is on Instagram, they kicked me out. Who knows why? So I don't have an Instagram account anymore.
You out.
Yeah, evil. Yeah, who knows? They didn't like us international women, maybe.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. And tell me, like, you've met a lot of expats. You've been an expat yourself. It was just like a piece of advice or a word of
Sure,
advice
yeah.
that you.
I would say the opportunities are at the end of your comfort zone. So just step out of your comfort zone, but step out to do something that you really want to do. Don't say yes just because you want to please someone. Do something that you're afraid to do and just do it. Like public speaking, being on a podcast like this, just step out and just do it. Because again, I bring up Nelson Mandela's quote, I never lose. I either learn or I either win or I
Or
learn.
you
So just
learn.
keep that in mind because if you move to another country, you've done something so huge. It's one of the most, difficult, challenging things that anyone can do. It's not a honeymoon. It's not even if you move to the most beautiful country in the world. It's so if you can do that, you can just step out and by putting yourself out there, there's one person that might benefit from hearing your voice by what you have to share, what you're doing. You might inspire one person. So just do it. Don't have second thoughts. Don't let those little voices in your head say you're going to fail. You don't deserve to do it because we all deserve to, and we can make the world a better place. That was a
That's
long sentence,
awesome.
but
I said that was good stuff. That was good stuff. And I thank you for reminding us that we are pioneers. We're doing things that people only wish they were brave enough to do. So Nina, I just want to thank you for being on the show. We have got to get together and
we
meet.
have to. Maybe we need to do an expat woman, black expats in Panama, get together, something, and gives us an excuse to meet up with you because I love meeting you,
I'm
Charlotte.
serious.
Yeah, let's
Yes,
plan something for sure.
absolutely. Well, thank you, and I will talk to you later. Thanks
Thank
again.
you. Bye. Bye,
All
Charlotte.
right, bye-bye. And there you have it. I love me some Nina Caputi. She is so funny. She is so authentic. And she is just so dope. And I hope that you can follow her at Expat Woman. And I hope that she has inspired you as she has inspired me today during this call. It was just such a refreshing, experience to speak to somebody on the other side of that expat journey, where she is expatriating from India to the United States, and her experiences were just invaluable. One of her favorite songs is "I Will Survive," and I'm pretty sure that's Gloria Gaynor. But oh my God, at first I was afraid. I was petrified. Everybody knows that song. And you know what? It is one of, I don't care what crowd you're in, what group you're in, that is such a good song. We have so much fun with that song. And, I'm going to sing it. I'm going to sing it, y'all, when I get done with this right here. But anyway, that was one of her favorite songs from the 70s. And I want to thank my main man, Daryl Spears, for producing this radio show for me. And also, he produces my Black Expat Journey. So, we have a podcast, and this program will be aired on our YouTube channel, Black Expats in Panama, my Black Expat Journey on the podcast. So we just like all over the place, okay? Um, Always want to thank Devin and Riley and the others that came up and created Black Sit Radio, because they gave us an opportunity to put our voice out into the world. My children and my children's children will be able to hear and know what I was thinking about during these times in my life. And I always just like to say that, because this is very important to me. And I always say, when you have a mic, say something. So what I want to say too before we leave is that we have amazing things happening at Black Expats in Panama. We have a couple of spaces at this time left for our December tour. So please do, lock into that. If you want to come to Panama December 1st through December 5th, I think we have three at this recording. We have three spaces left. And I just want this tour to sell out. It's our last one for the year. 2025 is going to be amazing. There's going to be a lot of changes coming. And I just felt very excited about this December 2024 tour that's coming up. So I hope that you can join us on that tour. Don't forget that we have the BEEP, How to Win a Business in Panama City forum that's coming up on November 15th, and it's going to be held at the Daiquiri 23. Listen, we'll be putting out more information about that probably within the next week. So you definitely want to be prepared to come and be a part of that. If you are in Panama thinking about doing business or doing business in Panama, whether you're a Panamanian, whether you are a foreigner in Panama, this is a workshop that I have found a great need for. Doing business in Panama is different than doing business in the United States. And I want to make sure that we have the best opportunities to succeed without getting ourselves in trouble. Okay. So anyway, it's going to be some great information, great presenters. And of course, it's always going to be networking and a lot of fun, because that's just what we do. Okay. So anyway, follow us everywhere. Black Expats in Panama. I am Charlotte Van Horn, and I just wanted to stop by here and tell you, I love you. I love you. And there is just nothing that you can do about it. Until next time, y'all, just be happy, be joyful, and live your best life every single day. Deuces.